I should also say it's lovely and warm up here with all these lights, so I hope you're doing okay. We find their story in 1 and 2 Kings, and that's what we're doing for the next couple of months. But by the time we get to this reading this morning, we're halfway through chapter 18. And what has happened, you remember that Israel's in a dark place. It's no longer one united kingdom of Israel. You've got the kingdom of Israel in the north with its capital in Samaria, and then in the south you have the kingdom of Judah, and obviously its capital is Jerusalem. Now by this point Israel's had 7 kings. They've all been rubbish, they've all been self-serving, oppressive kings, but this one they've currently got, Ahab, he's in a league of his own. He's in a league of his own. He's the worst. He does more to offend Yahweh than any king before him. He does more evil in the eyes of Yahweh than any king before him. He's the worst of the lot. The kind of wheels have come off up in Israel. It's a very different story down in Judah. You remember we talked about the king of Judah, King Asa, who was completely different to Ahab. He was committed to the ways of Yahweh. And so because of his rule, Judah was experiencing this period of moral and spiritual stability and economic and political stability, which led to prosperity. But it's a very different story up north. Pagan worship was rife. The title that Andy gave us this morning was this key verse that Nigel very helpfully read twice. How long will you waver? How long will you waver? It's a challenge Elijah gives to the people up on Mount Carmel. I read this email from Andy telling me that I was speaking this morning, and this was the title. So it had the title and the speaker. So what I actually read was, how long will you waver, Matt King? Which I thought was hilarious, because those of you that know my character would know that it's possibly not something you'd pin on me very easily, this idea of wavering, the kind of, the sitting on the fence. It's not an idiom that you would associate with me naturally. Well, especially on matters of faith. When it comes to my faith, I'm unequivocal, right? I know that I am saved within the confines of the human condition, of course, but I know that I am saved. Not because of anything that I have done, but because what Jesus has done on the cross. And in faith I received his gift of grace, and I am sanctified, I am saved by grace. I'm certain about that. That's not to say that I've got everything sorted. If you came to my study, you'll see books everywhere that issues that I'm thinking about, I'm trying to process, finer points of theology. And if you try to pin me down here or here or here, I would say on this matter I am ambivalent. But certainly when it comes to the fundamental tenet of my Christian faith, I'm not going to sit on the fence. I'm not going to waver. Why would I do that? But that is precisely where we find Israel. Religious pluralism was the name of the game. A kind of pick-and-mix approach to faith, if you will. What's happened, you have this king Ahab and his wife Jezebel. I think actually Ahab is spiritually indifferent. He's religiously indifferent. It says in 2 Kings chapter 10 verse 18 that Ahab worships Baal a little, which is almost thrown out as an aside, but it's a fundamental point that's important. Ahab worships Baal a little. You see, the problem with Ahab is his own king. No one's king of Ahab's life apart from Ahab. And he's got such an opinion of himself. No one else is telling him what to do. There's almost no room for any other deity in Ahab's life. But what happens, as is so often the case, this religious indifference creates a void in the life of the kingdom. And it's so often the case, into that void, Jezebel ushers pagan worship and a religious pluralism. She's fanatical about Baal and Asherah and El and the other gods. As many gods as you like. And so that's what's happening in Israel. And so Yahweh, the God of Israel, wants to call his people who have turned their backs on him back to him. And so he sends his prophet Elijah, who tells the king that Yahweh, the true God of Israel, is going to get to their attention. He's going to stop them in their tracks in the most dramatic way. There's going to be a drought. And the drought has lasted 3.5 years. And then Yahweh says to his prophet Elijah, now you need to go back. I'm going to send the rain. We're going to end this drought. It's time. We've got their attention. It's time to draw the people back to me. So he goes back. Now you'd think what's happening in, Kate spoke brilliantly and very helpfully last week on the few verses before. She wasn't happy that she got the few verses before, but that's where you start, love. Okay. What's happened, Obadiah, the servant of Ahab, and Ahab are in the field, and they're talking about the fact that even in the trophy city of Samaria, the drought has turned into famine. Well, Ahab says, listen, this is where we're at. If we can't find any kind of area of vegetation to grow food, then we're going to be eating the horses. The inference is that everything else is gone. It's last chance saloon, right? So Obadiah and Ahab split up and start foraging for food. This great, proud king, no one else is going to be in charge of Ahab. He's on his knees foraging for food. Very interestingly, but significantly, down in the southern kingdom at exactly the same time. You can see this in 2 Chronicles chapter 17. Remember the king Asa, who's committed to the ways of Yahweh? Well, he's died, but his son Jehoshaphat is on the throne, who is also committed to the ways of Yahweh. And at the same time as Ahab, this pathetic scene, imagine this king on his knees foraging for food, trying to find vegetation down in Judah, who are committed to the ways of Yahweh. Jehoshaphat is able to put more than 1 million soldiers, fully fed, fully equipped, on the battlefield. The point is this: Ahab would be absolutely aware of how things are going in the southern kingdom. So you might think when the prophet of Yahweh returns, he might be inclined to say, I can see the mistake I've made. I can see the mistake of turning our back on Yahweh. Can we sort this out? But that's not Ahab's style, is it? What Ahab actually says to Elijah when he returns, whoa, look who it is. Wow. How have you got the audacity to turn up here after all this message you've made, you troubler of Israel? Elijah, of course, isn't having it. No. Before we go any further, right there, Ahab, all of this stuff, it's on you. You have turned my people away from their Lord. This is on you. But Ahab is back and is going to get fixed. And so he says, I want to see everybody up on Mount Carmel. So you can bring Asherah's 400 prophets, bring all of them. Baal's got 450, bring the lot of them. In fact, everybody can come, all the civilian population of Israel. I want everybody up on Mount Carmel. There's going to be a religious contest. Imagine the scene. It's early in the morning. There must be a buzz. The last remaining prophet of Yahweh is back. There were other prophets, but they'd been hidden in caves. The last remaining prophet of Yahweh is back. What's Elijah going to do? Everyone's gathered there, and he walks forward. And the first thing he says, before he explains to them what the contest is going to be, the first thing he does is explain why there needs to be a contest. In verse 21, Elijah went before the people and said, how long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, worship him. If Baal is God, worship him. How long will you waver? To waver means, the translation means to sink. It's like sitting. How long will you sit on the fence and sink in your indecision? The point is interesting, isn't it? It's better to be worshipping Baal than to be here. He calls out their religious pluralism, and no one says anything. But they do know why they're there. And now he explains what the contest will be. We're going to get 2 bulls, and we're going to sacrifice them. The prophets of Baal, there's 450 of them. All of you can get involved. I want you to prepare the sacrifice on the altar. I'll do the same. And then I want you to call down fire. And I'll do the same. And whichever God answers by sending down fire, he's God. That good? And all the people say, probably the prophets of Baal were less enthusiastic, but everyone else says, yes, that's a great idea. Everyone said, interestingly, everyone said apart from Jezebel. Isn't that interesting? The person who was absolutely fanatical and convinced of Baal's deity has got absolutely no interest in turning up to watch Baal get measured against this monotheistic God, Yahweh, that she's tried to eradicate. But the prophets of Baal prepare the sacrifice and they start to pray. And they pray. And the moments turn into minutes. I don't know, I'm pointing the watch. They didn't have any watches. The moments turn into minutes and they pray. And their prayers become more enthusiastic, more desperate, and they start to dance and get hysterical. And the minutes turn into hours, and we get to lunchtime, and still nothing has happened. And I don't know how the crowd are feeling, but by this point, Elijah's had enough. I said to you a few weeks ago that as you invest in this sermon series, you'll be able to relate to Elijah and Elisha, right? But moments like this, can you imagine if I was on the mountain, it wasn't Elijah, can you imagine how gobby I would be if we were there for a few hours and nothing's happened, how sarcastic I would be. You'd be a nightmare as well, Zach. But there are other people here who would have plenty to say if we're watching this God not turn up for a few hours. And so he starts to taunt the prophets of Baal. What's going on? I mean, where is Baal? Is he asleep? Is he having a think? At one point he says, well, has he gone traveling? That's a polite way of saying, is he on the toilet? Is Baal having a wee, lads? What's going on? Where is your God? And they're humiliated and they're getting more and more hysterical. And so their response then, it's verse 28, nothing's happening. So they shout louder and they slash themselves with swords and spears, as was their custom. There's a custom? Baal has a habit of not turning up. This has happened before. So you've cut yourself, but the penny hasn't dropped. You just keep cutting yourself, right? It's bound to turn out fine. And this fast goes on all day. It's the evening now. The sun has set. It's time for the sun is just about to set. It's time for the evening sacrifice. And Elijah calls time, and the prophets of Baal must collapse exhausted and humiliated. And then it's Elijah's turn. And so the single prophet of Yahweh prepares the altar and the sacrifice. And then he does something which I don't think is a great strategy. He gets the people to drench the altar 3 times with about 15 litres of water, right? Bear in mind the objective is to ignite the sacrifice. I don't think that's a great move. And then after that, Elijah prays this amazing prayer in verse 36 of chapter 18. O Lord, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant and have done all these things at your command. Answer me, O Lord, answer me, so these people will know that you, O Lord, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back again. Then the fire of the Lord fell and burned up the sacrifice, the wood, and the stones, and the soil, and also licked up all the water in the trench. When all the people saw this, they fell prostrate and cried, the Lord, he is God. The Lord, he is God. When they experience Yahweh, they see the fire, then they are convinced. There is a God, his name is Yahweh. There's one God, he is the Lord, he is God. No one's sitting on the fence, no one's wavering. The sham of religious pluralism is seen for what it is, because now there is an experience. I was told this story about a little boy who was struggling with maths at school. Just for the sake of argument, let's call him Joe. And he had a teacher who was helping him with subtraction. And so the teacher comes up with this idea, and she says, Joe, listen, there are 5 birds sitting on a fence. There are 5 birds sitting on a fence, right? And then the hunter comes along with his shotgun, and he shoots one of the birds, right? So how many birds are left sitting on the fence, Joe? And Joe, without looking up or hesitating, says 0. Well, the teacher's very patient. But she said, no, hang on a sec, don't rush, Joe. Listen, let me do it again. And if you look up, I'll help you, Joe. So there are 5 birds sitting on the fence, Joe, right? And then this hunter comes along with a shotgun and shoots one of the birds, Joe, look. And now how many birds are left sitting on the fence? Again, without any hesitation, there were no birds left sitting on the fence. okay, now the teacher's a little bit frustrated. She said, okay, you're going to have to explain your thinking. Right. Joe puts down his pen and he looks up with some frustration. He says, okay, you said there were these 5 birds on a fence, right? And then this bloke comes along and he's got a big shotgun and he shoots one of the birds, right? Yes. But the other birds hear the shotgun. They ain't staying on the fence. And the teacher laughs with some relief. She says, I could see what you're thinking there. Actually, no, Joe, the real answer is there are 4 birds left on the fence. Now, it's only a story. But I like his thinking as well. I'm sure you'll agree, there will be no birds left sitting on the fence. Once the birds experience the shotgun and the effect and the feathers everywhere, no one's staying on the fence. See, religious pluralism, it exists in the hearts and minds of those where there is a lack, an absence of an experience. It's the only place it can exist. If I have experienced the transformational love of Jesus, the power of the cross of Jesus, I have experienced it, I've been transformed by it, and if I continue to experience the empowering presence of the Holy Spirit, why on earth would I share that space in my soul with anything or anyone? We've got a system in our house, right, for where we keep our keys. I say we've got a system because we don't use the system. I use this system in our house. She's not here today, so I'm going to tell it like it is. As soon as you walk through the door, there is 4 hooks, right? You hang your keys on them. They never get lost, do they? Unless you don't use the system. And then the keys could be anywhere, and we have it all the time. Where's my keys? She's late. Claire's running around. But then she's got this way of pushing me over the edge when she eventually finds the keys and says, they're always at the last place you look, aren't they? Always at the last place you look. But that's the truth, isn't it? Once you find what you're looking for, you stop looking. Something else that's so profoundly sad about religious pluralism, it points to people who haven't found what they're looking for. It was a problem 850 years before Jesus was born. It's a problem 2,000 years after Jesus has been born. I was thinking this week about this passage, and it just suddenly struck me. I was sitting there thinking, when I talk to people about Jesus, I meet Ahab and Jezebel all the time. I mean, I'm not talking about a murderous king and queen who are trying to, although I've met them as well. But think about the attitude of Ahab, right? I am king of my life. No one else is in charge of my life. No one else is controlling me. The only one making decisions in my life is me. It's about me. It's for me. It's me. The problem with this, it is the single biggest objection to faith that I encounter when I speak to people about Jesus. This disinclination to allow something, let alone someone else, lordship over your life. The only way my faith works is if the Lord has lordship over my life, right? Is if the King of Kings is the King of Matt King all the time, not just while I'm standing up here on a Sunday. At work, at home. No one has authority over me, Ahab say. The only person in charge of my life is me. The problem with that, though, is it's simply not true. Why not? Because we all need something to live for. We all live for something. Let me unpack this. I accept it's quite a big statement. Some of you will have read the essays of C.S. Lewis. They're incredible, this giant of the Christian faith. In one essay, he's exploring what it might be like if we were prevented from worshipping, for having a king in our lives. And he wrote this: if we are forbidden to honor a king, we will honor film stars, athletes, millionaires instead, even gangsters. The spiritual nature, like bodily nature, the spiritual nature will be served. If you deny it food, it will gobble up poison. The spiritual nature will be served. If you deny it food, it will gobble up poison. That is a remarkable statement. What he's saying is this. Well, basically, you tell yourself you don't need a king. You can tell yourself that if you want. But unfortunately, as part of the human condition, you do. Someone has to give your life meaning. Something gives you and your life significance. There's got to be something that you're looking to. Because I've accomplished that, because I'm doing that, because I'm living this way, now my life has some meaning. This life I'm living is worthwhile. It has some value. But, and it's a big but, friends, whatever it is you're living for, it's not serving you. You're serving it. You've crowned something. You want meaning in your life? You have to live for something. And whatever that is, you'll crown it. If you're living for your career, and the recognition and the status and the money that comes with it, the feeling you get when you stop and think about who and what you are professionally because of your job, or the ambition that is consuming you to get where you think you should be, to keep up with the Joneses, to realize the potential that you have, the potential to grow your business or whatever, and the kudos that might be bringing you. That you have crowned that. It's in control of you. Whatever you are living for, the spiritual nature will be served. So many of us know, but if you don't know, let me tell you that the only thing in the universe that will take control without crushing you is Jesus Christ. When you give yourself to him, you experience life in all its fullness. You experience ultimate freedom when he has lordship. That's the problem of Ahab. I'm going to be very quick. I'm sorry I've taken so long. The problem of Jezebel. You encounter this all the time. Religious pluralism. It masquerades in the 21st century as religious tolerance, which is a good thing, and it's been hijacked. The notion has been absolutely hijacked. You know, if you ever heard say, yeah, but you're a Christian, fine, but listen, no one religion has got the whole truth, right? You've all got a bit of the truth. But to make such a statement, you have to be in possession of all the truth, don't you, to decide that. To say no one faith can have a superior worldview, you must necessarily be in possession of that superior worldview to adjudicate that, don't you? While I was at university, I didn't go to this debate, but there was a debate between two brilliant academics, a Muslim imam and a Christian apologist. And apparently they were both incredibly erudite and very thought-provoking. They spoke fantastically, and at the end, there was time for some observations and questions, and they were going quite well until the student stood up and said, listen, ultimately, don't you both believe the same? I mean, love God, love your neighbor, right? Don't all religions say the same kind of thing? And the two academics, the imam and the evangelist, for the first time in the evening were kind of stunned that they hadn't been listened to. Let me tell you something, right? Here's a fundamental belief of Islam, right? That God is invisible. God is invisible. You cannot see him. I cannot see him. He will never appear on earth. Okay, that's really important. In Christianity, slightly different, we believe that Jesus is Emmanuel, God with us. He is Imago Dei. He's a representative of God on earth. We have seen him. He has been here. The prologue of John, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Jesus Christ, very nature God, appears as a man. Now, we could both be wrong, but we can't both be right. And that is not a criticism of Islam or Christianity. That's just an observation. So when people say, Christianity, it's good, it's lots of good. Education, health, welfare, community. Christianity's done so much good. Take my hat off to you, lovely Christian people. But, you're just one religion. So when you go, in John's Gospel, chapter 14, verse 6, when Jesus has the audacity to say, I am the way. I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me. The pluralist says, "Ooh, yeah." See, that's just going too far. That puts you above every other faith. Yes. So what pluralism says to every faith is you can have all your faiths, they're all lovely, but what you must do is rip the heart out, the original concept, your original belief from your belief system. And then we'll all live happily ever after. Which of course makes no sense to any faith. But I spoke to someone this week who made that argument to me. I met Jezebel this week. And the problem ultimately with the attitude of Ahab and the attitude of Jezebel is they seem very different, but they've both done exactly the same thing. They've swapped places with God, right? They've designed their own faith. Which is pretty good because you can't go wrong when you're God. Only you're not. I'm not. I've crowned something. The Archbishop of Canterbury, former Archbishop of Canterbury, William Temple, an incredible wordsmith, said this, religion is what you do with your sanctuary. Religion is what you do with your sanctuary. What he's saying is this: when there's nothing in the diary, and there's no one else around, and you haven't got to go anywhere, and you haven't been anywhere, and you're just daydreaming, you, yourself, and I, me, myself, and I, what occupies your thinking? Is it your career? Is it the next holiday you're going on? Is it your bank balance? Is it your family? Or is it your relationship with Jesus? Is it your holy destiny? "3,000 years ago, a prophet asked the people who were in a dark place how long you will waver. And here we are. Our biggest problem this morning is that the heating isn't working. And yet the same question is relevant for us this morning. Is there an element, a period in your life, a place in your heart where you are wavering, where Jesus doesn't have lordship? So my simple prayer is, and I just want us there to be silence just for literally a minute. I know time has gone. But I just want you to be honest with yourself, and more than that, I want you to be honest with Jesus. If there's an area of your life where he doesn't have lordship, where you are wavering, then it can be sorted out. So that you're back in the place where the main thing is the main thing.